Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's LandonRemixes here, and welcome to the 25th edition of Rapid Fire Reviews, the series where I talk about a whole heck of a lot of albums and EPs. If you watched the last Rapid Fire Reviews video I did, you already know the drill, but just in case you didn't, here's a brief rundown. Throughout the course of 2019, I accidentally let 128 albums and EPs stack up. So rather than driving myself insane by keeping all of these opinions that I've developed over the course of the year locked within me, I'm just covering them all in 1 week in 4 rapid fire reviews videos. In this video, it'll be pretty similar to the last one. I'll be talking about 32 different albums or EPs. And before we get started, I just wanted to issue guys a little bit of a warning. I'm coming down from a sickness right now, so my voice might be a little hoarse. I might talk a little bit quieter than usual, might be a little more nasally, you get the drill. But anyway, let's just get right into it. This year I had the privilege of being able to see Rusko live for the first time, and I've got to say I absolutely love his DJ sets. He might be my new favorite, and though I understand how influential of an artist he is, I've never really thought his productions were all that amazing, and this EP is included in that. They're fun, but nothing all that complex or interesting. I would love to see a project in the near future where Rusko brings that same entertainment and energy that he has in his DJ sets. This EP, I would say, does a good job of representing kind of each corner of Vicetone's sound, though I don't think these tracks necessarily represent the best in each of those respective styles. Fences is just okay, Home is flat out boring, Something Strange is fine. I don't have too many quirks about it, but I honestly would have preferred to have Walk Through Fire on this project, especially since the project is called Elements. But then we get Feels Like, which almost makes the entire project worth it, because honestly I think it's the best song Vicetone has done in years. You know, I don't listen to the super squeaky clean poppy future bass all that much anymore, but if I did, it would probably be this EP by Vincent. Vincent really makes these songs his own. They're very well structured and catchy. Would definitely recommend it. For me, this is a really good example of what not to do with a concept project. Even though every track on this EP flows seamlessly into the next, I feel like these songs really don't have all that much to do with each other, and as a result we get all these long, overbearing outros in each song that just tack on extra unneeded time. And also, you know, I think You Got Me is a fantastic song. I think I talked about it in my last Monster Cat Uncaged Top 5 video. I think that song is great and one of his best. But the song No Sleep is so horrifyingly bad to me that I just kind of wanted to forget this project existed. Overall, I don't think this EP is quite as good as Welcome to London, but I do think it does have some more distinct standouts, like Blue to Blue I think is probably the best track I've heard from CloudNone, and Juliet I think is a beautiful song. I love Matt Van's performance, but I just wish the instrumental paired a little bit better. I don't feel like they were completely in sync. This EP to me is basically just Nothing and Lost Inside plus 3 dubstep bangers I'm probably never going to listen to again. This is my favorite project from Lemaitre in a while. In fact, I don't think I've ever liked an EP that they've done quite this much. Genuinely enjoy every track on this EP, and Rocket Girl is just phenomenal. It's an absolute slapper. I've been listening to it pretty consistently throughout 2019, so yeah, definitely check that one out if just for Rocket Girl. Definitely don't think this is Ray's best work. It seemed like he went and took a little bit more of a formulaic route on this project, including getting a slice of that sweet mid-tempo pie. That aside, I think Warp Zone is really solid and probably the best track on this EP. Wouldn't say I enjoy this project nearly as much as Uh-Oh. It's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more relaxed, a little less in your face with the experimentation that Tennyson tries to do. Though if you're into more chill variants of electronic music, somewhere in between like ambient and future bass, I would probably suggest this. This EP is a good place to start if you want to get into Tiigers, which you really should. Their sound is incredible and distinct. I'd say they're one of the best up-and-coming duos in the bass music scene. Don't sleep on them. This EP is pretty much what it sets out to be, just 3 straight bass music bangers, which came as a bit of a surprise to me considering Sakuraburst's last project before this one was the more experimental Venner, but it works in this case. I mean, the sound design is incredible and I can see these 3 songs crossing over really nicely into the dubstep market. I don't really see how this is a mixtape, but I guess I'll say, like, you know, it's nice to see Alesso doing this rather than the pop garbage he's been churning out. But overall, it's not really that good to me. It doesn't touch most of Alesso's early work. I don't want to say this album was a monumental disappointment, but it was a pretty big disappointment considering Gesaffelstein's last big project was Aleph, which I think is one of the most influential albums of the last few years. This project, however, I don't really see being all that influential at any point in the future. It seems like he couldn't decide between whether he wanted to do an R&B record or an electronic record, and the fusion of those two is just kind of awkward throughout the album's running length. And sure, there are a few really solid songs in this project like Reset, Blast Off, and Humanity Gone, but beyond that, this album doesn't really have much for me. I'm not absolutely in love with this EP, but I do like how it sees Graves kind of taking a turn for, I guess, a little bit more experimental, a little less clean and polished sound. I wouldn't say I particularly adore any of the songs in this project, but I do like this direction that Graves is going in. This is one of the better debut albums I've heard this entire year. I think Wiwek did an excellent job diversifying his sound on this project, and it's not like I've ever thought his singles were particularly bad, but it translated much better into an album context than I anticipated. It's nice to see Yellowclaw kind of do a return to form after 2 more pop-leaning studio albums. Though I wouldn't say I love this project as a whole, it is nice to see them pumping out the EDM bangers again. Particularly, I really like 20,000 Volts, the collaboration with Radical Redemption. Insane. This EP completely slipped under my radar for a majority of the year. I hadn't really listened to any of Eliminate's music until after I met him at a show that Chime was playing at. Kind of decided to check him out on a whim after that, and I was absolutely blown away. Incredibly unique. This EP reminds me about why I was so excited about Botneck a few years ago, and Weeble Wobble has got to be the best EDM song that's released all year. This EP I wouldn't necessarily say is my cup of tea, but I did think it at least deserved a mention in this segment because I got to see Matt Lange do a little kind of production workshop at NAMM this year, and it was really, really cool. He actually went in and dissected the title track from this EP, and for that I appreciate the song a ton more, and I guess Matt Lange as a producer in general. This EP is interesting to say the least. It's certainly more experimental and less formulaic than Sincerely, but it's also quite a bit less socially conscious, which is one of the reasons I really enjoyed that album, and the songs really just don't stick with me quite as much. I thought this project was much less memorable. This is definitely not the route that I expected Josh Pan to go down for his first studio album, considering a lot of his past work. Him and Dylan Brady surprisingly make a really good combination for this kind of R&B indie sound that the album is going for. However, I think a lot of the ideas on this project generally tend to get pretty old pretty quick, starts to feel tiring, starts to feel like this project overstays its welcome a little bit. Personally, I would have much rather seen this translated into a shorter but sweeter EP. I mean, overall, I guess I'd say this is one of BTSM's best projects, even if it is only 2 tracks. And I think their sound works especially nicely on the song with Blank, Hackers. Huge shout out to Ekcle. I feel like these guys deserve a ton more attention. I found these guys last year through their collaboration with Vorso, Midnight Sun, and I do not regret checking out some of their other stuff. They just have this certain way of creating these incredible immersive atmospheres while also putting a ton of ideas out on the table. This EP showcases that extremely well. It's a very ambitious project. The downside to all that is that this EP isn't the most cleanly mixed or cohesive project when you compare it to other projects by Eccle's contemporaries in the neuro scene, but it's still definitely worth checking out. I honestly do not understand the hype behind Half an Orange. I think their music is like so so boring. I mean, obviously I understand the appeal behind nostalgic music, but I think like 90% of the time, Half an Orange doesn't even hit that. Just seems to be executed so poorly, I guess with exceptions to Old Friends and Left Behind, which thankfully both of those are on this project. I think Left Behind is a great song, but hey, what do I know, because that's really their most EDM sounding song, and maybe I just have a closed mind or something like that. I really so desperately wanted to love this album, and I've given it a few tries, and I just can't do it. A huge aspect of why I thought New Age Dark Age was such a solid project is that it was so weird and experimental and out there and glitchy. And Body Rush is pretty much the Karma Fields we've come to know and love, just stripped of those elements. And even though the stakes seemed higher this time around, with bigger collaborators like Tove Lo and Little Boots, this project came off as so much more underwhelming and lackluster. I personally wouldn't put this one above Moody Good's self-titled album, but I think it is a nice refresher to show that Moody Good is still there, still kind of listening, getting a feel for what is popular in dubstep right now and being able to translate his sound into that. This album pretty much does the exact same thing as Hope, and I just don't understand why. That album was a really good, refreshing project. I don't think it needed like a sequel that sounds pretty much the same. I don't think this EP is quite as representative of 13's uniqueness as Old World Order, which I think is honestly kind of ironic considering we're talking Mousetrap here, but Delusion is a banger. I'd at least check out this EP for that one. I am not as crazy about this mixtape as seemingly everyone else. I don't think we've ever gotten a project from Flume that's quite this smooth and straightforward, which is probably why a lot of people like it. However, in my book, there just aren't that many highlights on this project, which makes it a difficult listen when it's almost 40 minutes long. I think the remix of Is It Cold in the Water with EPROM is really good. I really enjoyed the one with JPEG Mafia and the one with Sophie and Kuka, but beyond that, I don't know. I guess I didn't think it was anything that amazing. According to Crywolf himself, this is his most personal project to date, and that's evident considering how immersive and emotionally packed it is. However, much like Crywolf's debut album, I feel like Widow tends to dwell on one idea for a little bit too long. This album is pretty diverse and experimental, but it almost doesn't feel like that because it doesn't move from one thing into the next all that quickly. Personally, found this project to be pretty underwhelming. I definitely wouldn't say it tops Paradise Lost, and I was also pretty disappointed that most of my few favorite cuts from this album ended up being singles that were previously released, like Exodus and Lift You Up. Beyond that, I didn't really feel like Delta Heavy knew how to work constructively with their collaborators, especially on the Muzzy and Kuro collabs. I was very disappointed with those two, or just trying to sound too much like Pendulum, or just making melodies that sound all too weak. I didn't think this EP was quite as good as Shadow Task, but it is a really solid follow-up, and I would definitely suggest checking it out if you enjoyed that project. Alice, Lost, and Faded Light, I'd say, are my three big standouts from this project. And lastly, we've got Above and Beyond's Common Ground Companion EP, and I've got to say, like, you know, the three songs that this EP is centered around definitely aren't bad. I think most of them are pretty enjoyable all the way through, but this EP as a project, it's effectively 40 minutes of the same three songs, and it gets very tiring. Never in any instance would I ever listen to this project back to back with Common Ground. And that's gonna do it for this 25th edition of Rapid Fire Reviews. Yeah, expect another one on Thursday. You guys know the drill, I assume, at this point. As always, the Spotify links for every album and EP I talked about in this video can be found in the description, in order for your ease. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you like the video, make sure to leave me a thumbs up. And if you have any opinions or thoughts on any of the albums or EPs that I talked about today, make sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Anyway, I'm LandonRemixes, and I'll see you guys Thursday. Peace.